Amid the Potomac's waves to freedom and an abundance of monuments and museums lies another piece of history in the nation's capital.
This vault dates back prior to 1850 and was used as part of the Underground Railroad.
Lisa Fager runs the Mount Zion and Female Union Band Society Cemeteries. The 200-year-old 3-acre properties make up one of the oldest predominantly Black cemeteries in the area.
There were not many places where Black people could be buried in Washington, D.C. with dignity.
When you're walking through, you can almost miss the little pieces of history throughout, like this shell often used in Black burials.
And that's where they hid. William Steele wrote about it. There's a couple stories in the narrative.
Fager spends part of her days teaching anyone who will listen the history of the land, the other part fighting for respect.
One of the most wealthiest sections of town, Georgetown, and it looks like this, and people treat it like a dog park.
She took over the nonprofit in 2019 and says funding to preserve the cemeteries has ebbed and flowed.
So they moved all the markers into these 3 piles in 1974. And this is where they sit today.
Now the land faces a new challenge, climate change.
I've had a funder come here who told me I do not have 10 years. We have a lot of invasive weeds, roots are exposed. We've had trees just fall.
Across the bridge in Alexandria, Virginia lies another piece of history, the Contrabands and Freedmen Cemetery.
An ongoing process of discovering who all of these people are and what role they played in Alexandria's history.
Monica Sanders is a climate change researcher and professor at Georgetown University. She says despite being only 10 miles apart, the 2 cemeteries look vastly different.
Investment, plain and simple. This is still in a state of being discovered, so we still have some archaeological digs. There's still research being here. But the city has committed itself to discovering who's buried here and what their stories are.
Here, construction crews are at work.
What's going on up there is the restoration of a creek that increases our flood risk. And also it's a natural habitat. There's some turtles and birds and things in there that are unique to Virginia, that they are recreating the correct habitat for them.
Historically, the fight has been against developers plowing over the sacred grounds. But as more of these places are being discovered, climate change is adding to the race against time.
About 60% of African Americans live in 10 states, and all 10 of those states are in the South. So if you look at Georgia and stretch all the way around to Louisiana and upwards towards the North Carolinas and Virginia, they're all coastal states that are at high risk of hurricanes, of sea level rise, and then they're next to huge river tributaries like the Potomac and the Mississippi, so you get riverine flooding.
Sanders says funding for these projects varies. Sometimes it comes from city and state budgets, and other times from private groups and volunteers. Virginia State Senator Jennifer McClellan helped lead new legislation that will provide funding for cemeteries built before 1948, when a Supreme Court decision ended cemetery segregation.
My great-grandfather, much of what we know about him, we know because it's on his tombstone. And so these cemeteries are critical components of connecting us to our ancestors and our own stories.
At the federal level, a bipartisan piece of legislation introduced in February hopes to provide $3 million annually for the research and upkeep of these sites. In the meantime, Fager says she'll keep shooing away the dog walkers and raising the alarm on the seemingly forgotten piece of history.
This free labor that they had that built these institutions, including the White House and all the federal buildings, that they owe it to these people to make sure that this is okay and honored like sacred land that it is.
Amber Strong, Newsy, Washington.